Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next ECRGenius webinar on regulatory oversight. My name is Natalie Nava. I'm the program manager with the Center for Creative Land Recycling, working on the ECRG program and grant. And today we are going to start just with a quick poll, but just because we want to get a sense of, where people are at in regards to regulatory oversight. So the first question we have is, do you know what a regulatory oversight agreement is? As we've been doing technical assistance with people, there's a whole range of people who know what regulatory oversight, have worked on brownfields before, and then there are people who are really excited about the opportunity, but don't know what a regulatory oversight agreement is. And so we really wanted to go over things today. And then also we just want to know who's currently working with a regulatory oversight agreement. So I'm just going to let that poll sit there for a little bit. And next, Mariam Tasnif Abbasi, who is with the Office of Brownfields, will be giving an intro to the webinar today. Oh, and last thing is, if we have any questions, just some housekeeping things, please feel free, as usual, put the questions in the chat and then we'll answer them in the end. That way we'll have plenty of time for questions today. And I think that's pretty much it. Thanks, Mariam.
Great, thank you so much, Natalie. Let's go ahead and get to the next slide. Before we get into the specifics, just in case we have people who've joined us today who are not very familiar with the ECRG, I wanted to give like a really brief introduction. Basically, we are in the second of 3 rounds of a 270 million sort of giveaway that we had. So we've done 75 million last time. We have about 100 million available this time. This entire program is about incentivizing cleanup and an investment in our most vulnerable and disadvantaged communities. The grant itself is available for public entities, cities, counties, any type of government organization, nonprofits, and tribes. And with our money, you are able to apply for and then conduct community-wide assessments, site-specific environmental investigations, site-specific environmental cleanups. All of our applications are done through a online portal, so there's no paper. Everything is submitted through the Flux portal, and it is a competitive process. There are a lot of eligibility requirements, kind of beyond what we're going to be discussing today, and I would encourage everyone to attend our next ECRGenius webinar on an eligibility self-check tool that we're going to launch, so that anyone who's interested in applying for this money can take some time to prepare ahead of time, answer some questions, get documents together, and really try and figure out beforehand whether or not their site and their organization is able to be eligible for this money. Narrowing things down a little bit, I did want to say a few words on why regulatory oversight is really important. Greg is going to talk about what that is and what that means, but from a broad sense, I did want to tell everyone that the reason why regulatory oversight is a requirement for the ECRG is because we want to make sure, in particular when we're working with disadvantaged and vulnerable communities, that all of the cleanups, assessments, and investigations that are done in a safe and protective manner, and making sure that our grantees are partnered with a regulatory agency to oversee the decision making gives us that greater level of comfort that communities are safer and are safe for proposed use. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Gregory Schaefer, our brownfields statewide brownfields coordinator, who's going to walk us through everything that you need to know about regulatory oversight agreements.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Like Mary mentioned, my name is Greg Schaefer. I'm a statewide brownfield coordinator here at DTSC. I kind of do all things voluntary agreements throughout the state for DTSC. So I look at new oversight applications, I draft new agreements, I create resources for making sure that our agreements and our scopes of work move through as seamlessly as possible. And I'm always looking for program enhancements. So Today, I was asked to speak to you about what regulatory oversight is, give you an introduction to the types of agreements available at DTSC and other regulatory agencies, and kind of link all that information back to the Equitable Community Revitalization Grant, or ECRG, eligibility criteria. So like Miriam mentioned, regulatory oversight is when a government agency is reviewing work that's performed by others to ensure compliance with applicable regulations. And it really provides the highest level of certainty that the work that contractors or other groups are doing meets the applicable regulations. For DTSC, that means we are doing document reviews. We're commenting on these documents to ensure that they have all of the components they should have. And then we provide approvals, concurrence, or we could reject a document as not meeting the required standards. It also includes field oversight when sampling is taking place or when a cleanup action is taking place, ensuring that whatever was written and approved in a work plan or a cleanup plan actually happened when the contractors were out in the field, digging up soil or installing some sort of remediation system. The regulatory agencies also provide no further action determinations or certifications at the end of work, which basically state that based on the documents that they have reviewed and the work that they've overseen, that they do not believe that any additional work is required for the safe use or reuse of a particular site. An important thing to note is that DTSC and other environmental regulatory oversight agencies are a fee-for-service. They have a fee-for-service setup. So the project proponents that enter into these regulatory oversight agreements are responsible for paying oversight costs to their regulatory oversight agency, whether that's DTSC, the water boards, or a local agency. And it's important to note that regulatory oversight is an eligible expense under the ECRG, Equitable Community Revitalization Grant. Just another housekeeping item, these slides will be available at the end of the presentation, likely early next week. So you will have all this information coming soon. Who could provide regulatory oversight? So particularly for oversight of hazardous substance investigations and cleanup, like I mentioned, it's the Department of Toxic Substances Control, DTSC. That's the agency that I work for and who administers the Equitable Community Revitalization Grant. Specifically, we work in the site mitigation and restoration program. Sometimes it's also called a cleanup program. The regional water quality control boards, there are a handful of water boards throughout California, and some of them operate a site cleanup program, and that would be where you could enter into voluntary agreements. There are also local agencies, which are typically county. Most of them are county level, but there are a handful of city health agencies as well. And we actually have a list that I'll show you in just a minute, a list of those agencies that administer these programs. And last but not least, some tribal governments have their own oversight agencies for environmental health or other health specific oversight. I am going to click on this link just really quickly to show you where you can find a list of the self-certified agencies that can provide their own regulatory oversight. So this is DTSC's website for local agency resources, and there is a drop down here. So if you click this blue bar, it will expand and show you the 11 counties that have currently self-certified to be in compliance with some new laws that went into effect earlier this year. But generally, we can just run through them really quickly. Alameda County, Los Angeles County, Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, San Joaquin, San Mateo, Santa Barbara, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz. Again, these are all counties. None of these are the cities specifically. So if your site is within one of these counties, that's an option for you as well. Let me get back to the presentation. These are the eligible regulatory oversight agreements under ECRG. So just very broadly, ECRG requires that the grantee is in a voluntary agreement. So I'm going to talk about voluntary agreements, and then I'm going to talk about non-voluntary agreements in a little bit. But these are the types that are offered by DTSC. So we have what we call the standard voluntary agreement. It's kind of our most basic, most straightforward agreement. It kind of has no bells and whistles in it. And basically any party is eligible to enter into this. We also have local agency agreements, which are specifically for cities and municipalities. There are some eligibility requirements, namely that the city or municipality applying for it cannot be responsible for the contamination that they wish to investigate or clean up. And there are some potential liability protections offered with that as well. And I do need to just provide a little disclaimer if anybody is interested in the potential for liability protections under any of these agreements. We recommend that you seek legal counsel with your own attorneys or organization. The third on that bullet list is the California Land Reuse and Revitalization Act, or CLARA agreement. It similarly offers some liability protections upon the completion of a response plan, which is a cleanup plan. There are eligibility for the parties entering into it and site requirements as well. So for any of these agreements, we do recommend that you speak with a DTSC brownfield coordinator such as myself. And last but not least is a prospective purchaser agreement, or we call it a PPA as well, which similarly offers liability protections. These are individually negotiated with your attorney or legal counsel and DTSC's attorneys. They can take a little bit of time to get into, but they do offer some value. It's important to note that for ECRG, DTSC will only be entering into standard voluntary agreements for the most part. We may be able to enter into a local agency agreement if the city or municipality is eligible for it, but we are not offering CLARA agreements or prospective purchaser agreements alongside ECRG. Second is the Regional Water Quality Control Board, or the Water Board, as they are kind of colloquially called. They offer what's called a reimbursement agreement, which is a pretty simple, straightforward document just saying that you agree to reimburse the water board for their oversight costs, and it generally includes a scope of work and a cost estimate. DTSC is also in discussions with the regional boards to include some investigative orders. That hasn't been finalized yet. And this is a little bit of a change than from round one, if anybody participated in some of the round one webinars. But for ECRG round two, we are discussing that possibility, and that will be finalized in the coming weeks. Third are our local agencies. Their agreements are typically called remedial action agreements. That's what they're called in statute, but just with the 11 or so agencies that administer these agreements, there can be some variability in terminology. So the best thing to do is just check with your local agency and let them know that you're interested in a voluntary agreement for cleanup or oversight. Last but not least, it's very important for ECRG. This is a requirement as well, that the applicant and the grantee, the potential grantee that's applying for ECRG funding, must be named in the agreement itself. So if you are, a city or some other agency, sorry about that, I'm not sure if you can see that I received a call. If you are a city and a certain department is in the application, generally DTSC is going to want to see that same organization or that same department within the city be named on the oversight agreement as well. That goes for nonprofits as well. So if a nonprofit applies and but your redevelopment project is part of a limited partnership or some other structure, we really need the consistency between our grant agreement and the oversight agreement. Next are tribal oversight agencies. Some tribes have their own environmental health departments or other health agencies that have the ability to oversee work. If you are interested in pursuing tribal oversight as an eligible cost for under ECRG, we just ask that you set up a call with DTSC, and we just want to understand how your oversight agency is set up, and we just want to have that discussion with you and make sure it meets the requirements of ECRG. Next are ineligible oversight mechanisms for ECRG, and I'm just going to go over this broadly. Typically, orders are not an allowable oversight mechanism for ECRG. Orders are a regulatory tool that compel responsible parties to take investigatory or cleanup actions at a particular site. So DTSC typically enters into these types of mechanisms when there is a really some contamination at a site that is posing an imminent risk to people that occupy that site, or if there's a party that is unwilling to take action, but is otherwise responsible to take action. Because of the nature of these oversight mechanisms, they really just aren't a good fit for ECRG and are not, they are not an allowable oversight mechanism. Next is an ECRG project suitability letter. This is new to round 2. Again, if people were participating in round 1, they are going to be required for sites that are under a regional board or local oversight. And we are currently finalizing the process, and these letters will be updated in the coming weeks as well. But basically, it's going to be a general information letter coming from the regional board or local oversight agency to DTSC and the applicant, the ECRG applicant. It's going to include the type of agreement that the project proponent is in with these other oversight agencies, the date of the agreement, the name of the party on the oversight agreement, the level of cooperation, so how well the parties are basically doing the investigation or cleanup work, the recent activities, so just a list of recent completions or recent documents that have been submitted for review, and agency resources needed to support the ECRG timeline. And the ECRG is a relatively short timeline, as many of you are aware. It's only for a 2-year time period. So we are just looking for a commitment from these other regulatory agencies that they have the staff capacity to support any ECRG applicants as well. This is just a really important thing for us to note, because internally at DTSC, it's really easy for us to get information on existing agreements and how they're going. And it's a little bit more challenging for us to get some of this information from external agencies. So this letter will be required for new ECRG applicants, and there will be a template available very soon. Next, which agency do I contact with for oversight? So I've been talking about 4 or 5 different types of regulatory oversight agencies, and you may be asking, which one is right for my site? So kind of the long and short of it is that each regulatory agency kind of has their own niche within the state based on their jurisdiction that they've been given in law, or some jurisdiction that has been passed to them from another regulatory organization. Some agencies, some people do have preference. The water board typically handles issues with waters of the state, especially surface water that DTSC doesn't necessarily always handle, but there is overlap in terms of things like groundwater. So you can apply to whichever agency you think you'd be most comfortable with. Sometimes your consultants may steer you in a particular direction as well, but ultimately the agencies themselves decide which oversight agency is the most appropriate. And it's based on a couple different things like site conditions, the potential for reuse or redevelopment, whether it's going to be a sensitive reuse or not. Jurisdiction, again, like I mentioned, waters of the state typically would fall under the water board jurisdiction, or human health, primary human health risks would fall to DTSC. But like I said, we all communicate with each other. So if you apply to DTSC for oversight, we communicate that same application with the water board, and we make a decision together on who will be the lead agency. Similarly, if somebody applies to a local agency for oversight, those local agencies are required to notify both DTSC and the regional boards before they enter into a new agreement. So it's all kind of built into our system and our process that we will communicate with each other. Next, how to apply for oversight. So DTSC's request for agency oversight application has been moved online. It is in our application portal, which is the same application portal that's used for the ECRG application. And I have a screenshot coming up on the next slide to just show you that. But basically, if you use the link provided in these slides, you'll go there, you'll request an account. We'll approve you within a business day or 2 business days, and you'll be able to log in and see any of the applications that are available. Right now, it's only the request for agency oversight application, but the ECRG round 2 application will be available in January 2023. The Regional Water Quality Control Board has the same request for agency oversight application. The questions are almost identical to what we have in our application portal, but theirs is a Word document. Not every regional board offers a site cleanup program. So we would recommend that you get in contact with your Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is the link I provided here. And it'll tell you who to contact and see if they can provide oversight for your case. Last is the local agencies. All self-certified agencies, again, are on DTSC's local agency resources webpage. We would recommend that you use the link there to go to their cleanup program website and fill out their application. And just with the number of different local agencies, approximately 11 or 12 at this point, the applications will vary slightly based on each agency. Like I mentioned, this is just a screenshot of DTSC's application portal. So after your registration gets approved, you'll use the toolbar on the left-hand side to click Submit an Application. It will show the screen that you see here on the right-hand side, and you'll click the green button to select Start a Request for Lead Agency Oversight Application. It's going to ask you for things like contact information, who your consultant is, if you have separate billing information that we need to know about. And then it's going to go into some site details, what were the past uses of the site? Have you already started conducting work? And maybe the names of reports that you've already completed. But really, it's data information for DTSC to receive or the water board to receive in order to make a determination of who's going to be the lead oversight agency for it and what type of agreement is appropriate to enter into. Next is how can you get additional assistance? So as part of ECRG, we have a brownfield technical assistance provider that is the Center for Creative Land Recycling, or ECRG, who is with us today helping us host this webinar. They have appointments available for application assistance, as well as early stage ECRG project envisioning, site eligibility verification, discussion on specific application focus areas. So when the application itself is released, if you're having trouble with a particular section, you can check with them and they can run through your answers with you. And overall, they are truly here to help facilitate pre-applications and all the way through final awards. There is a note here, working with CClear dramatically increases your ECRG success. 95% of applicants who worked with CClear in round 1 of ECRG received funding. So we can't stress this enough. Please set up an appointment for application assistance with CClear. You'll end up getting a contact that may be a redevelopment specialist or another of their staff that's going to help you and be your point of contact for ECRG questions. And they are truly a great resource that DTSC relies on. This next slide is just what you'll see if you click that link from the previous slide to request application assistance. Basically, you're just going to input some of your contact information and select a date and time that you would be available for that call. It's a very simple process, and it's going to give you a direct contact to ask any of your ECRG questions. This is a handful of the CClear team that is helping us. So Ignacio David Hardnish, Janet Naito, and Sebastian Harrison, some of who I think Sebastian might be on the call today. Devin Rainwater, Tony Torres, Natalie Nava, Helen Lahoda, and Lujayan Altawara. They are all excellent to work with. And again, we can't stress this enough. Please get in contact with CClear to start helping out with your applications. And the earlier, the better. I think our application is going to be here before you know it. Last, we'll just have some time for a Q&A session. I did want to do a quick note that DTSC's next ECRGenius, the eligibility self-check tool, is going to be next week, October 27th at 10 a.m. There's a link in this presentation to do a sign up, but it is also available on DTSC's website. Again, contact CClear for application assistance. If you have general ECRG questions, you can contact ecrginfo@dtsc.ca.gov. That will go to myself and a collection of our other staff within our group to answer, again, general questions. We can't provide application-specific support because many of us will be reviewing and scoring applications after they start coming in. So again, specific questions on your application, you should schedule an application assistance call with CClear. But if you have general questions about our program, you can always contact DTSC. Last but not least is DTSC's ECRG webpage, where we post all of our guidance on the grants, links to the free application assistance sign up. We hold our webinar recordings and our presentation slides all there. It's really kind of a major hub for all things ECRG. So please feel free to take a look at that information and let us know if you have any questions. All right, that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and keep my slides up just in case there are any questions that we want to go back to and look at. Natalie, did you want to help me moderate if you can?
Yeah, no problem. First, I just wanted to share the poll results just so we can see. We had about 16 out of the 19 folks on the call participate, and we have 75% knew what a regulatory oversight agreement is, which makes sense, right? You want details of how DTSC works, but it's always good to see new people coming in. And then I would say, yeah, we have 7 people who are currently working with the regulatory oversight and 9 who aren't. So we hope we've gotten through, you know, a lot of information here, and really just right now we have time to kind of open the floor to anyone who has any questions. I didn't see any questions in the chat. So I know it's a lot of information. It might take some time to kind of sit through, or you might need to really look at your site and figure out, you know, what regulatory oversight agreement you want to work on. But if we don't, we can give it another 30 seconds. But if no one has any questions, then we can close the chat and the webinar.